to live stream the meeting. Okay. To start this off, I'm never live streaming ever again. This is it. That was like, I feel like I'm stressed since I live stream the meeting. So hey, welcome to JSNotOxford. That's the name of it. Cool. I have one sec. Okay, cool. Can you hear me?
Can hear you.
I'm nodding, but you can't see me. So.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Right. Okay. I'm gonna put the link in the chat just now because that's what we do. We put links in places, and I'm gonna take a few breaths.
It's all okay then now.
Yeah. Ta-da! Nice one. Right. Okay. Right. So now we can get started. Right. Drive. I hope we can like edit this later on and kind of take out all this stuff of me not understanding how Zoom or Google works.
I don't think that's how live works.
Yeah, cool. So right, I'm just gonna jump straight into some intro stuff, and as part of that, we will say hi to everyone. So desktop one, cool. So it's official. Welcome. So yeah, we're on. This is the maybe JSNotOxford, and the naming behind this brand is because it's online. So that's not Oxford, and also Ryan pointed out if we're not just Oxford, we might as well not just be JavaScript. So that's the maybe JSNotOxford. So just to explain the brand. With us on this call, we've got Ryan. Ryan, do you want to tell us your name?
I'm Ryan.
Cool, nice. So yeah, Ryan is on, you can see on Slack, on Ryan, SpikeHeap on Twitter, and he's going to be talking to us about some stuff to do with PRs, which is going to be cool. We've got Gabor joining us. So yeah, we're all on Slack, we're all on Twitter. So you're on Jaworski on both of those. Shout out to Gabor for having the same handle on both. That's good work. Saren, and your Ninja Nails on Twitter. So hey Saren, how are you doing?
No.
Hey. And Ruth, you're joining us too. How's it going over there?
I might freeze. I think that my handles are the same, are they not?
I think on Slack you're Ruth, but maybe I typed that in incorrectly. So yeah.
Yeah. Slackbot calls me Remira. Maybe I am. Maybe I am.
Cool. And then you got me. I'm Ben. I'm on the internet too. So we've put a link in the Digital Oxford Slack under JS Oxford. So hopefully you can watch along there. And if you have any kind of comments or questions or whatever, just plonk them in that Slack or DM one of us or tweet us. We've got Twitter as well. So yeah, and then the way this is going to work is like we're just going to have a bit of a chat, and if we read any questions from other people, we'll bring those into the chat, and it'll be lovely. We'll have a great time. Yeah, and I should say, so there's a code of conduct for all JS Oxford events, and you can find that at jsoxford.com/code of conduct. And yeah, that's all good. I think we've all read this, helped write it as well. So that's cool. This is what we're doing. So we're on item 2 and we are 20 minutes behind schedule, which is, I would say that's kind of quite impressive, right? Like, are we impressed with that? I'm impressed with that. And yeah, so I guess we can do that. So wait, how do I do this? Stop share. Cool. So hello. That's the official bit out of the way. Now we can just chill.
Cool.
Sweet.
that seems like the perfect time to get riled up about differences of opinion about pull requests, right?
Amazing.
Awesome.
Is there ever a bad time for that?
Just before you're about to go to bed, so you can lie there plotting someone's demise because they don't like the format of commit messages. Yeah, that's awful. Yeah, I thought it would be kind of interesting to talk a little bit about what our experiences have been of pull requests, because it seems to be it's kind of the nexus of where all of people's opinions about pretty much everything that you will have written, how you'll have written it, and how you ship it to production, it all kind of gets into this nub. From commit messages, like I mentioned, through to how big the thing you've written is, what you've done, how you've approached it, architectural decisions, and then how it's gonna get shipped. I'm actually going to have to synchronize my sips of water with you, Ben. So I guess for everyone, we'll probably know what a PR is, but it's kind of, we're assuming that we've written some code on a branch, we've pushed that branch up to presumably GitHub or GitLab, and we want to get it merged. And so we've got some process that we go through, which would be a merge request, a PR, pull request. But that's pretty much where I think our consistent view of things ends. There's just so many different variants for how people do things. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about how we might go about designing, I was going to say process, but let's say guidelines, because process is an evil word now, for how you might go about a pull request or what it means. And I think it's important because there's a lot of dogma around some of the things that you end up seeing. So like the classic example, we talked about it with Ben and Adam on Friday, is rebase versus merge, both into your feature branch and into main. It's easy, like it seems to be, like Adam said, when you look on the internet, it's either you should rebase all of the things, and if you don't rebase, you're an idiot. And there's a whole other camp that says you should only ever merge because if you use rebase, you're going to get set fire to. And there doesn't seem like there's a lot of middle ground. And I've had the same sort of experience talking to people about who merges a commit. Is it the author, or is it the person who's doing the review, or is it a bot? And what's the scope of commit? Should it be 10 lines or less, or should it be an entire feature? What even is a feature? And it feels like if we don't design things around our needs, you end up with a bit of kind of cargo culting. So you see people somewhere shipping successfully and looking like they're building great stuff, and you're like, they always rebase, therefore if I always rebase, I will be successful. And we don't necessarily get the effects from the actions that we're taking. So I've got to cite Ben before I go on to this bit, because when we were talking on Friday, he was talking about actors in his guidelines and how you kind of say, when you're an author, this is what's expected of you, and when you're a reviewer. And it kind of ties back to the stuff I'm doing in government, where everything is supposed to be user-focused, and you end up with user stories for all of the things. I think when we're thinking about pull requests, whenever you end up in these kind of debates about which approach we take, we want to kind of refocus around a common goal, which, to quote Ben, is to apply a change, I'm doing air quotes, to apply a change to a project. That's pretty much our goal, right? There's some side effects that we like we'd like to learn new things, we'd like to make sure that we're doing the best stuff. But it's easy to get into this idea of being a gatekeeper, when that doesn't fit our goal at all, to prevent change. And I think there's another thing that we add into that equation, which is your constraints and aspirations. So I listened to a few podcasts about continuous delivery and how we should be shipping things, get rid of staging, every commit to master gets delivered straight away. So if aiming for CD is really important for you, then you probably want very small, well-defined changes that get shipped through very quickly, and you probably want to reduce the friction to getting that change merged. In government, a bunch of the projects that I've been involved with have involved big legacy systems with a lot of risk. So we actually end up hand-holding a lot more around merging, and we do act more like gatekeepers because we want to make sure that we're not exposing ourselves to risks of exposing prisoners and offenders to things. So yeah, the different constraints and the different things you want to try and achieve will affect the process that you go through. So the only other thing I'm going to mention before I'm going to let someone else talk, because this is not a chat, is that I don't think any of this, well, a lot of this stuff doesn't really matter. Whether you merge or rebase, you're probably going to ship good things. Like if you were going to ship good things, you'd be shipping good things anyway. All of the decisions you make, it's more about ensuring consistency within your team so that you don't have friction between people. Because ultimately, this whole process is for people to make progress, not for code to be good. So yeah, I'm interested to kind of open it up to the floor a little bit. I don't know how much time we've got.
We have got a schedule, but it's gone.
We're already late. Let's talk to my 5 minutes. Yeah, I'm interested to hear other people's thoughts and what their experiences are.
On consistency, like, so I read your blog post. I feel like I shouldn't say that because it's no, I did. I read your blog post. It's brilliant. And one of the things that it made me realize was like how many times over the years I've switched from one side to another on a particular topic. You know, like I used to always be like, you must someone else must merge your work, but then I've switched to the like, now I always do it as an author kind of thing. And it's and there's been like so many different things that I've kind of like gone from one place to the other and felt really strongly about. But now I realize this is like, it's kind of like what you were describing was like how to set the guidelines for it and how difficult and challenging that is. It's like, but yeah, that's my thought on consistency. It's like consistency doesn't have to be like global throughout your entire career or something like that, right? Like it kind of has to be consistent with the project you're working on and the people you're working with, maybe. Yeah, definitely consistency with the people you're with, not the people with the consistency with the people you've worked with in the past. Yeah, exactly.
Everywhere you work as well has their own like idea of what a PR should be and how it should be done. So I remember when I first started off where I worked, PRs worked in like once it was reviewed and someone was happy with it, they merged your work in, and then I went to work somewhere else and we worked out like someone would approve your PR and then you would merge it in. Mm-hmm. But like, so it's always going to change, but it also made me realize how much more I enjoy merging in my own PR, because then you feel like you've accomplished something and you've done it.
Yeah, I was going to ask that, Seren. Am I on?
Yeah.
Good. Okay. Hello, tap, tap, tap. Yeah, what are the benefits of you merging your own PR? Because that's not how we do it. Whoever approves merges. But there are reasons for that as well.
Yeah.
But it's just so you feel good about yourself, right?
Yeah. And I feel like it's really nice when like you've got like a new person on the team and they've got to push that button to say that like they've merged their work in, and if you've got any like automated code behind the scenes that like it's deploying it, then like they've pressed the button on their first deploy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a different sort of set of problems to solve in my previous place. Essentially, whoever gets to merge an approved PR would change from team to team, and it was kind of never defined. So I always would have to have this back and forth. Like, okay, do you want me to merge it now that I was the approver, or do you want me to tell you that I approved it so that you can merge it in your time? It was especially useful, for example, when we were taking care of legacy systems, and even though we had testing and we did all the manual testing that we could think of, something might possibly break, at which point it was infinitely useful for us to merge our own PR in, because then we would have Datadog and Kibana and whatever open, and we can keep an eye on it so that in case something did go wrong, we could immediately roll it back. Whereas if someone else merges it in at whatever time, when we're not paying attention and everyone just kind of goes back to doing their own jobs, a failure might not be surfaced for a couple of hours, even days.
I actually did this today. I didn't break anything, but I merged a pull request which closed an issue, and I reopened the issue based on what was needed for the issue without realizing that I hadn't reviewed the PR quite closely enough to realize that everything had actually been fixed. And I shut my laptop after that. I was like, obviously I need a break. Like, it was only one small minor thing, but it was still a bit annoying for the person that had fixed the issue, right? Because I'd gone back and gone, oh no, this isn't all fixed, but actually it was. So I do think we could probably do the written process around things like that. I don't think in my situation that having people merge their own PRs is the solution, which I will get to when I talk about the situations I'm in.
There's a really interesting new setting on GitHub that they're kind of, I think they're rolling out in beta at the moment. That's you on a repository, you can opt in to have a PR merged as soon as it passes a certain set of criteria. So that might be being reviewed, testing on CI, and that basically erases this question altogether, which is kind of cool, I think. Just like let a computer do it. But
I think as well that'd be interesting to see how people react with it, and if it will cause more people to start using draft PRs, because sometimes you make a PR more to like show someone a piece of work or get feedback from someone rather than maybe wanting it to go into like your main branch.
Mm-hmm.
I actually really like that feature. I've been using that. Like, I like the ability, especially working remotely, I like the ability to put in some work and say, hey, how is this? And get some review on it before, like, with no sort of what's the word I'm looking for? Commitment to have it merged. Like, I like that a lot. Yeah. It's funny how Git is such a tool for not just repository management anymore. It's an entire workflow. It's kind of as if sometimes I feel like, from a personal point of view, I've had no Git training. And obviously I've been using it since we switched over from SVN all those years ago. And yet the other day I had to do something which was, add a remote, make sure I branched, merged the remote master in. And I remember thinking before I did it, oh my God, I have to do this again. And I started to go to Google, and then I went on the command line. I just did it all automatically. And I think that me personally, I feel like I would say to you, I don't know Git. Whereas actually that's not the case, and maybe having some self-belief. But then you've got these whole other abstracted layers. It's not just about version management or adding to builds or anything like that, is it? It's about a whole workflow, which, yeah, it's good. It's good, but it's a lot.
And on that, like, I mean, what Ryan mentioned before about like drawing a line between being a gatekeeper or not, like by reviewing people's, is like it stretches into social aspects as well, right? Like, there's a lot of kind of how does it feel for someone to be kind of have their PR stopped or blocked or anything like that, or does it allow people to kind of become gatekeepers of projects and stuff?
Yeah, I actually made a note of that, because this is something that makes me quite nervous. Is because we're talking via text on a screen, and there's no tone and there's no context. Like, every time we talk with text on the screen, I do get nervous about stopping PRs or closing things when people disagree with what I think, and trying to have that conversation over like one issue or one pull request. I struggle with that personally.
We've actually built that into our guidelines too. Like, so one of our things is that if you've got a conversation that's going on 2 or 3 messages deep and you're kind of getting into the depths of it, then try and suggest a Zoom call, like, because I think you can kind of like end up in these rabbit holes where you don't quite understand each other's nuance. And so we're kind of like trying to encourage more of a kind of chat to resolve that, which is like, I mean, we only kind of defined our guidelines quite recently, but so far they seem like they're making a positive impact.
So how do you get the decisions out of that Zoom call back onto the pull request? Because
yes.
I mean, assuming those will need to be documented.
Yeah. So quite often you'll see like a bunch of messages, and then you'll go off to Zoom call, and then you might summarize back in that message. So for someone following along, this is what we chatted about, what we decided. And also the other thing that's quite useful for that conversation is that you've got you've got a conversation to reference to, you know, like, so you can say, like, on this actual comment, what is our actions from this, or something like that. So I get your point. It's like, it feels like it might disappear down a rabbit hole or something like that, and you're like, but which it sometimes does, but it's useful having the reason that you started the call in the first place. So
yeah,
I like that idea.
The other interesting aspect to me is social, because it's a power dynamic as well, especially when we get into a situation where, for example, someone holds up a pull request because of an objection that they have, and it might be a nitpick. And for example, if I'm the author and I think it doesn't actually matter, then I want to get it in, and they don't want to get it in, and then now we're at a stalemate, and I struggle resolving that, because, I mean, technically, because if I don't care, I could just do what they are asking me to do, but at the same time, I find it unnecessary, because I feel like sometimes these are just, nits for the sake of nits.
So
yeah, sorry, Sran.
I know what you mean. So one thing I did notice that helped with like stopping the nitpicking with PRs was if like you and your team, if you can, like to write down like what you agree your like linter or something's going to do, and then you've got a robot who is going through your code and being like, oh, this needs to be indent and stuff, and you're taking away that like super picky person maybe going through someone's PR and be like, I'm not going to approve this because you've used tabs instead of spaces. Instead, you've got this like thing. Yeah, it doesn't work for everything. It works for like some of the smaller bits.
But this is like, we were doing this in Go, and Go has like automatic linter built in, and it will format your code the way it wants it to do. So like all of those decisions are taken out, but it's things like what your variable should be named as. And it's like, is it a plural or a singular, and does it really matter in the context? And for some people it does matter.
I think it kind of comes back to what your common goal is, though, right? Because it's really easy to get to focus on the nitpicky things. It's like, oh yeah, you haven't pluralized this, or or actually you could do this slightly differently and it would probably have the same performance, but it would fit my mental model better.
Yeah.
And it's like, you've got to think about, and this is kind of hard to do when you're reviewing, but you've got to think about like, what's the value of that change? Like, is it just making it fit something that makes you feel good, or like feels neat and elegant to you, or is there actually a problem? And then it's like, it just becomes a risk trade-off, doesn't it? You say, well, if this problem manifests, then it's going to make this thing explode, or we're not going to understand what this variable name is because you've called it X, but it's actually Y. And if it's not that, then like, do you really want to block that change from shipping because that's your common objective? I think I'm way more than my allocated time here.
We were 20 minutes late.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
PRs is a very big topic too.
Yeah, it is.
I love how meta it gets as well. It's like, how do we have a discussion about discussing code changes? Like it's it's very kind of satisfying.
4 hours later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, I think now would be a great time, Ruth, if you're up for telling us about MDN contributions. Hello.
Hello. I'm gonna start my video just so everybody can see me, but if it's breaking up, just like me, and I'll stop the video. How's that? Okay. 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 I've got this like light shining on my head. It's spotlight time. So hello, I did like an introduction and then I realized that you all know me. Hi, I'm Ruth.
Sometimes I forget these things, so
I know.
You just,
sometimes I put the wrong
information. You have frozen a little bit for like.
Okay.
I say a little bit. I mean a lot.
I'll turn the video off, and because you see me now, you don't need to see me anymore.
We've seen
you.
Yes,
and hopefully that will sort out the problem. If my audio is breaking up, okay.
No, that's all good. I think we can hear you really well now.
Okay, great. Then that's the important thing, isn't it?
It is.
So I was going to talk about MDN because that's what I've been working on for about 9 months now, non-stop. I have been doing work for MDN. I'm a freelancer. I have been doing work for MDN on and off for about 4 years. And come May, Google approached me about documenting some APIs that they were interested in because the tech companies support MDN. For anybody who is watching that doesn't know what MDN is, it's Mozilla Developer Network Docs. And if you are a developer, you're probably very familiar with the term MDN, which is what we shorten it to. And it's a place of reference. It's a massive wiki of lots and lots of, mostly focused on web technologies, but it does have documentation for a few other bits and bobs. So if you're coding day to day and there's some, I don't know, API method which you're lost on, you'll probably go to MDN and you'll look it up and the documentation should be there. So the job entails writing up documentation for new things, new features that we have in languages like HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It involves updating the information which is there because things change a lot. And there's just lots of like going into specifications on TC39 and making sure that the JavaScript reflects the thing that's happening. So a lot of the bigger tech companies that are invested in the web, Google is a really good example, help support MDN even though it's owned by Mozilla and run by Mozilla. So Google had approached me because they had a set of sort of native capabilities for web, basically. So it's a set of APIs which give you the same features that you might get if you're creating native applications, either on like phones or devices. So some APIs that I documented for that contract include file system access, which you've been looking at, Ben. I know that excites you. It's like the ability to actually read and write to your file system. So not just upload files, but actually be able to like deal with data. Clipboard as well, so you can copy and paste and have access to that data. Cool things like barcode detection, so you can scan your phone and the web app which you've created can scan a barcode or a QR code, things like that. There's loads more, but my job was to document these cool APIs for MDN. So that's what I did for most of 2020. I'm sure that the people I'm talking to on this call are aware. Back in August, there was a bit of a tweet storm about it, but Mozilla made, I think it was 25% of their employees redundant. Now, what that meant for Mozilla MDN web docs was their team was shrunk quite a lot. And so they approached me back in October and said, can you come and do some hours for us as well? Because we need to keep the docs up to date, and all the browsers have releases where they release new features, so we have to make sure that everything is, you know, it's a constantly evolving system of making sure it's up to date, so that when all the developers around the world go and look at MDN, they're getting the correct information, right? So I am now doing that for Mozilla. So my day-to-day is keeping things up to date. One of the interesting things to come out of this, and it was kind of nice to be working on MDN whilst this happened, was in December, MDN changed its infrastructure. This had been an ongoing project for a long time. And what it meant was they moved off of, it wasn't necessarily old, but it was kind of big, a big content management system. And the old way that you used to update MDN was you go on the site, you click on an edit if you're logged in, you'd be presented with a WYSIWYG or an editor and you'd edit whatever was on MDN and then you'd click OK, and that would be automatically live. A lot of people struggle with that concept. I remember when I first realized that's how you added things to MDN and changed things. I was like, it's instantly live? Oh my goodness. But no one ever really abused this system. It was based on trust and it actually worked. And it kind of worked quite well for me coming in and actually writing and updating. But the it kind of like the infrastructure needed updating, and they wanted a way to be able to review changes that come in so we could get more contribution from the community, because I think that developers, people writing specifications, that whole group were a little bit scared to just be like, well, I'm going to update this page. What if it's wrong? What if everything goes wrong? And you know, it is a big website. There are tens of thousands of views on each page every single day. So it's understandable. So what they did with the content part of MDN, the bits that you see, is it's now served from GitHub as a static site. I'm going to share my screen just quickly. This might freeze, and also we're going to get lots of bends. There we go.
Oh.
Is that okay? Can you see MDN?
Yes, we can.
Excellent. I'll talk slowly and hopefully this will be all right.
Yes,
so this is now. What's that? Sorry.
Sorry, I'm sorry to interrupt you with this. It seems like it's going great. Is what I wanted to say.
I'm glad. So this is MDN. On every single page, I'm going to go into. I was updating array. We have an array at method now, which is cool. It's not gone live yet, but check it out when it does. On every content page such as this, and sorry, I know I'm scrolling fast, but array is a huge page. At the bottom, just above the head, just above the footer, there is this little grey area, and it says, found a problem with this page. I don't think that's worded entirely right. I think it's, do you want to change anything? Can you see something that doesn't seem right to you? You can view the source on GitHub. So if I click on that, this takes you to the file that is serving that page, which is just HTML. There's a bit of front matter at the top, but it's just HTML. So if you see something on MDN which doesn't look quite right, you want to change the spelling, the words, the code variables have been misspelled, all things that are very easy to sort of overlook. You'll be surprised. You can just click on this link. And GitHub's web UI is a really nice feature. You can just click on the little edit icon. I don't know whether you can see me do that over video. And it says edit this file. So you can just click on that. As long as you're logged into GitHub, you can click on that, you can edit the file, and that will come through as a pull request, which automatically gets assigned to somebody who's reviewing the pull requests. And we have a whole team of people reviewing these pull requests on different areas, depending on what people are looking at. So that's really cool. You can update MDN yourself. Interestingly, there is a difference. So this is the repository MDN/content. If you actually look at that, there's guidelines. There's a lot of guidelines in the README here about how to contribute. And one of the things to mention is, to me, there seems to be no middle ground. You're either doing a small edit, in which case using the web UI is perfect, and I've been using it loads. So you just go in, you change your grammatical errors, just like you did with the WYSIWYG when it was a WYSIWYG source. But to add content or make bigger changes, that's when you're going into the realms of actually forking the repo, making all of your changes branching, and then pushing up a pull request. But you can go in and you can do this, which I 100% advise people to do. If you want to do more because you're nice and you want to add and help MDN, which is great, there are issues in the issue tracker, and you can pick those up. They should be being tagged with useful information, like how long something's going to take and what type of content it is, whether it's JavaScript or HTML, CSS, or web API. So that's MDN on GitHub, which is very cool.
Very cool.
Was there anything else that I wanted to say? Not especially. I'm happy to go back and chat about. Let me stop sharing. There we go. I'm just going to start my video so you know I'm still here. Bye. I'll stop it again. Thanks. So yeah, it's been really interesting for me because it's a slightly different review process. It's like you can't have all contributors merging their own pull requests. There's lots of reviews. We had quite a lot come in over the Christmas period, even if they were small. So there is this constant monitoring. Things get automatically assigned. So there's probably about 5 or 6 people reviewing the same tags that I am. So it'll be like every 5th or 6th pull request will come directly to me. But yeah, it's been a really interesting sort of month of figuring out a good process for myself. And that goes for both contributing, because I'm writing content, I have tasks which I have to do, which are either small or big. So I'm either reviewing and doing small updates, or I'm doing these bigger, like multi-page editions and all the rest of it. But also from a review process, like how do I review the bigger pull requests? How do I review the smaller ones? Like, so yeah, I'm definitely deep in needing some guidelines, which I'm sure there are some on the content repo, but I'm thinking that from a personal point of view, it'd be good to get some good workflows. I've noticed a number of problems, like for instance, the web UI. I think that's really good and quick for small changes, but I miss things with the web UI. And I do find like when you put in a pull request, you can make, like the reviewer can make suggestions over the code that's been submitted. But you can't make suggestions over suggestions. It starts to get very confused. And I've also had problems with bigger multi-line suggestions. So you'll click a line and be like, suggest. You'll change a few lines, and then GitHub, like web UI, doesn't really understand that it's a block that you're trying to suggest. And like there was one instance where I ended up with 2 of the same thing, and I just had to pull it down, change it, and push it back up again. I'm wondering what everybody's experiences are with that. Personally, I think that would be a good chat for me.
Sorry, thank you so much for that. That was really cool to see, and it's so cool to see that it's like from viewing the docs as a developer, it's so easy to actually kind of get in and change it. You know, like because I'd heard about that migration, but I hadn't actually seen how kind of like linked together it is. That's like super cool.
Yeah, I mean it was quite quiet. There was a couple of blog posts that Mozilla put out about it. But I think because it's only been a month and we're still figuring out processes that work for us, we're not necessarily shouting about it to everybody just in case we get overwhelmed with pull requests and then we'll get a bit stuck in the mud with it. So we're kind of sort of riding the wave a little bit at the moment. It seems to be working. We seem to be happy. But yeah, it is. I'm really hoping that we'll get more contributions because, you know, they do get a review, right? Yeah. Like, even if sometimes I mess up the review, like I'm still checking and making sure that spellings are right and, you know, language is right and things like that. So, yeah.
I guess it's been a really interesting path because it's not like you basically jumped into the deep end of like this huge content base and trying to use GitHub and PRs to kind of to maintain that. Whereas like you kind of like, I guess mostly in most regular circumstances, you'd have kind of incrementally grown the process and the content. Whereas like because of that migration from the other platform, suddenly you're just like, okay, how do we do this at scale? You know, like
it was a very carefully considered project. I know that like I didn't work on the actual like moving to static site or anything like that, but I think they did think about it very long and hard, and it does seem to be working. But you're absolutely right. Like if I'm working on adding content, for instance, before I would just go into my account on MDN, click add a page, and then fill the page out. Whereas now there's just like realms and realms, like VS Code, just trying to scroll through. You've got to update BCD data. You've got to update interactive like examples. You've got the content repo, and you're just scrolling through files and files and files and files. And it is big.
thought
You can talk now.
what you said about like making a mistake or not catching like a typo or whatever was interesting, because I think it's easy to forget that we're all human and we are infallible, and it's actually kind of okay to let stuff get through. Like the goal of the review process or whatever, we're still catching, say, 90% of the stuff. So even when you have a bad day and something gets through, the overall code base is still way better than it would be if we weren't working on it. So it's kind of fun.
I'm glad that you said that. I did think that this is why I shut the laptop and walked away. I rectified the mistake, but I knew that I would just be thinking about it for like the next few hours, and I had to go away and just be like, it was one mistake. I mean, it's fine. It wasn't anything that broke anything huge. Nothing's on fire. I just annoyed somebody because I hadn't reviewed their pull request properly.
On YouTube, Jamie asked a really great question, which is like, oh, hi, by the way. Does the fact that it's HTML pages make it going to make it difficult to repurpose the content for other purposes in the kind of content base?
So what's the question? Because they're HTML pages, does it?
So does the HTML format cause problems with repurposing it to other places? Because when you went into the content, it looked like it was generated HTML rather than Markdown or something, maybe along those lines.
Yeah, so we don't tend to use the actual page-to-page content on MDN for other purposes. There's things like BCD data, which is, but that's browser compatibility data, which you see at the bottom of most of the documentation. There's a big grid, and it shows you which browsers support the feature on that page. That's a separate repository and has been for a while. It's a separate project, and all the data there is held in JSON. So that does get repurposed. Things like can I use, repurpose it, things like that. So I believe, yeah, I think that.
Can I use the MDN source? That's
the browser combat data. I'm going to Google that when you're talking.
Cool.
Yeah. Oh, I figured just that existed. I don't know. I didn't know how. That makes sense.
Yeah, it's kind of a project unto itself, browser compatibility.
Yeah.
And then it's just kind of interlinked with MDN because it's used so heavily, I think. And when we update features, we update the browser compatibility database as well to make sure it's up to date, which is a whole other talk. There's lots of moving parts. One thing that is on the roadmap for that content repo and updating is to eventually have the pages in Markdown so that they are easier to read for people that aren't necessarily, comfortable with HTML. Mm-hmm. And yes, okay, Markdown's another kind of thing, but it tends to be a little bit leaner, and you don't have so many elements and tags flowing around, and it can be easier to read. So that's in the roadmap. I don't know whether that entirely answers the question, but
yeah, no, yeah. I think that's
okay.
Great answer.
So anyway, my question to you is, do you have a difference in workflow between small changes and larger changes?
Is that to anyone or like
anyone on the board?
Okay, yeah.
Not really. So the way PRs in our team work is you just have to state like in your title most of the time if it's a bug fix, a feature, or however semantic versioning works that I can't think of right now. Yeah, bug, minor or major. There we go. And then we've got like a template which comes in and you fill out all the details. But all three of them are kind of dealt in like the same way.
Do you review and approve those pull requests in the same way, regardless of how they are? And how do you do that? Do you use the web UI, get desktop? Do you use command line?
So I use the web UI. Actually, so having now said that, I've realised if it's a really big change, then I might pull down the change and test it locally.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm doing the same thing. Okay.
Yeah.
It's good to hear.
I thought about it till you just mentioned it, and I was like, wait a minute, I do change.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm wondering if anybody uses GitHub Desktop, because I'm interested to see if that's. No, I've never touched on it either. I'm interested to see if that's easier to see file changes than the UI is, the web UI. Maybe I should just try it and get back to you all. Let you know.
Next month.
Next month, yeah.
Maybe JSNotOxford, we could just like talk about PRs every time, right? Like it'll be like an ongoing series. This is it. One topic.
We could become a PR consultancy.
Oh,
another public relation.
So in the YouTube, Jamie has said that GitHub Desktop is horrible, but Matt Trow has mentioned that they avoid doing any large changes and try to do as many like small PRs as possible to avoid that. Because they take away the complexity.
I guess, but it really depends on what you're building. If the thing that you're building logically as a unit is quite large, then you can't really, sort of incrementally build it. The one thing that I'm looking for as a reviewer when I get a pull request that's like quite large is a really detailed pull request comment that says, this is what it does, this is how you, or what you need to click onto to test it. This is what it looks like if it looks like good. Okay, let me do that again. This is what it looks like if it's good. This is what you need to look for to make sure that the thing that that the code change achieves is actually working. Just because when I get a change request with like 47 files and 4,000 lines of code, I don't want to reverse engineer to figure out what it is supposed to be doing. And I don't even know what it is supposed to be doing. All I can see is what it is doing. And I don't know whether that was the actual intention or not.
I really like that idea of the review, like encapsulating your change rather than just trying to be the smallest thing you can get. Because we've ended up having some really interesting discussions about the architectural impact of the changes we're trying to do, because it's got all of the bits, all the moving bits. I don't mean thousands and thousands of lines, but more than a 10 or 20 line change. And sometimes that can kind of be lost if you just chip little bits and you don't have another mechanism for having that discussion about what it means.
Yeah, it's tricky. It is tricky. I haven't had to deal with too many huge changes, but I kind of agree with both here. It's if I'm adding a new feature, so the @ method that I just added it was quite small actually, but I was adding 3 pages and updating 3 others. But and that kind of had to be one piece of work. I could have broken it down into each. So the @ method has been added to array, typed array, and string. I could have broken it down into those components, but all the things that I'm changing are very similar and they're all in the same place. So it does make sense for me to put it all together. But because now everything's a static site, we've had a few people like grep the repo for whatever reason, like removing non-breaking spaces and things like that. And you'll get a PR in with like 500 page changes. Like, I haven't touched any of those yet.
I think that's something, because the size of a thing doesn't necessarily mean the number of files or something like that. Like you might like that, like a kind of string replace on non-breaking spaces is like, that's gonna be quite an odd-looking PR.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not necessarily wrong or annoying. It's that is what it is, and that's part of the reason of having it as a static site is because it's easier to make those bulk changes, right?
Yeah, totally. And more transparent as well, because I guess you would probably make those kind of changes on something like WordPress. Like you might kind of like you do a database thing, whereas like if you've got it as a kind of commit, you can actually see what the impact was and roll back or something.
Yeah, absolutely.
I came across one of your demos on MDN a couple of days ago, which was really cool.
Did you?
Which was the weight clock one, which you didn't mention in your list, but I found that really useful.
Put it down.
yeah, it was, and it was really cool. I was really like, it was cool to see who had written it, and it was even cooler to see it was you. So
it's like, if you have any updates to the page, just pop them in.
cool. I know how to now.
Yeah, exactly. You can just assign it directly at me.
Yeah.
It's very good. Like, I like the change of the system, because those APIs they've been through a number of what's the word, like revisions as far as specification goes, and I think that Google had got to the stage where they're pretty certain that that's the state of that class, of that interface, right? But it's still relatively new, and the only things that you have to go on, like, you can't go and read tutorials or blog posts, they haven't been written yet, so you have to read through a specification, turn it into some information for everybody else to use, and then like hope that it's understandable to people. So yeah, feel free to give feedback. It's quite a sort of kind of blind process a lot of the time. Yeah, I'll wave. How's that? Thanks very much. Thank you for the conversation.
No, no, thanks a lot. It's like, yeah, super informative and useful. Also, some of the things you mentioned slide really well into what I was about to talk about. Almost as if it was planned. And people might hear that and think that we did plan it or make a joke right now, but this is not planned. So it's like
it was absolutely meticulously planned.
Yeah. Shall I go on with what I was going to talk about, which is like developing in GitHub? I think it might be quite relevant to your interests. So I have slides because I'm really kind of formal like that, but I don't know where they are because of all the kerfuffle before with getting Zoom and everything kind of signed up. I don't know. So give me 1 sec.
Settle in for 15 minutes.
Yeah. I'm probably gonna have to leave the Zoom call to join back in.
We need the SpongeBob thing of like 12 hours later.
Exactly. For those of you who are watching this on it later, before the call, before we get joined, I was in a state. I was jumping off the Zoom call, closing everything, like starting new Zoom calls, trying to get it working, and I guess it kind of worked. So, right. Okay. Cool.
And why?
Right.
I added the embedded YouTube video onto the site.
Oh, that is awesome.
Fancy.
Right. That is. Wait. What is the site address?
JSNotOxford .amplify.
JSNotOxford. Perfect.
Focus.
Wait, where's that at? Oh yeah, look at that. We're looking at the YouTube embed on YouTube.
Is this Spaceballs? Do we get to like find out what you're about to talk about by clicking play?
Yeah. Oh man, that would be organized. Right. Okay. So the first thing I'd like to point out is I've got some slides, but I put them at the end of the other slides just to save on internet space because we don't want to use it all up. So yeah. So what I was going to talk about quickly was how I've been using GitHub tools for development. So yeah. Takes off nicely from what Ruth is talking about. And what I wanted to kind of like highlight at the start of this is like, this is how I've been using these tools. And like, it's not meant to be an exhaustive talk about what GitHub Actions are or anything like that, because they do a lot of things. So yeah, I'm going to leave that to you. So the tools I was going to talk about are GitHub Pages, GitHub Actions, and GitHub Codespaces. Codespaces is slightly different because that's in beta at the moment. I feel obliged to point out that Ryan hasn't got the beta yet. Wait, actually, Ryan, have you got the beta? Do you want to like?
I still don't have the beta.
Yeah. I mean, not that it's a big deal or anything like that. I mean, I don't know if we both applied for it at the same time, but yeah, who knows? Cool. So yeah, GitHub tools. So I was going to go through those quite quickly. So GitHub Pages. This allows you to publish content from a GitHub repo online to a web address. So here I've set up this GitHub Pages setting, which is publishing it to my website. And then when you've got a kind of repo that contains HTML, CSS, or whatever, every time you push to that branch, the main branch, I've got it set up here, then that will deploy to a URL. So that's kind of vanilla GitHub Pages. I think possibly most of us have used this on the call. Yeah. Actions is another GitHub tool. So this is basically on an event. So maybe a push to a branch, you can define certain actions for it to run through, and it will run like CI tests or kind of deployment stuff, that kind of thing. So this is what your action file looks like, kind of like a Circle CI or Travis YAML file that defines the action, and then every time you push, it will run through that. And then the last one is code spaces. So this is basically like dev server in the cloud. So if you got access, when you go, one of the ways you can run this is you click on the code, and instead of checkout, you've got this open with code spaces. And what that'll do is it'll open a new window, it'll spin around a bit, and then eventually you'll have a kind of developer environment. What am I looking at? IDE. Something that looks like VS Code, but it's a web browser, and that lets you kind of like just edit files, do stuff. So something you say, like, none of this is new per se. Like, so GitHub Pages, kind of similar to Netlify. Well, I mean, GitHub Pages has been around for ages. There's lots of different things about it. GitHub Actions feel kind of like a CI server, or even like that runs in the cloud. And then code spaces, there's been stuff out here in this space for quite a while. Like AWS bought a company called Cloud9 quite a few years ago, and you can kind of do all this kind of stuff in there. And Glitch is really cool for this kind of functionality too. But what makes this kind of different is that everything is in one place, right? Like, so your code, you define your code, your actions run in GitHub, you do code spaces in GitHub's infrastructure, and it's all quite kind of tightly coupled together, and it feels quite nice for running through. So some of the use cases that I was thinking that I might use this for is like, so vanilla static sites, like I just showed you there. Something more complex, like maybe you've got build steps like Webpack or things like that, or maybe some kind of like tooling which doesn't have a website attached to it, but you're kind of wanting to build that. So I've used, in the past few months, I've been using this this kind of stack for all of these, and I've got some demos that I was going to run through super quickly because this is only, this is going to be super quick. So we've got like 3 demos: vanilla static sites, complex static sites, and CLI tools. And these are all open on GitHub, so you can kind of browse at your leisure. So, and I've got a bit of a crib sheet over here that is half done. Cool. Is this making sense so far? Cool. Nods from Saren. Thanks. Cool. So
yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Do chime in with any kind of questions or whatever. That works. Right. So the first demo is demo 1. So this is basically just as vanilla as you can get. So basically, I've got an HTML page, CSS, JavaScript in a GitHub repo. I put the settings to this to being on GitHub Pages, and so now this is published here. So I can kind of like see demo 1 and see this confetti, which is pretty useful. So, and this is cool. And so, Ruth, as you mentioned, through this GitHub API, you can kind of do any changes you want in this UI here. And so I can kind of like make demo 1 to have some exclamation marks. I can commit that straight into the main branch because that's the kind of person I am. And yeah, so then that's updated after a few minutes. After it's kind of flowed through the CDN, it will be live. One of the things which is it's a really nice kind of way, and if it's a nice way of getting people into development as well, because it's just like taking it back to basics. But code spaces is kind of cool for this as well, because like, so just now when you edit that HTML file, you can't actually see it live, so you can't tweak around with it so much. You got to wait for it to deploy. Whereas if I open this in a new code space, this is what this looks like. What this is doing is it's spinning up a kind of like default code space, mounting my code inside of it from that repo. and it will take a few minutes. And it's running the container. And then we'll have something like VS Code that you can actually just use pretty much all the functionality as if it was local, but this is actually running within GitHub itself. So here we can see this HTML page. I'm gonna add in at the end of the demo. And what we can do is down the bottom, we've got this terminal, and this is just a regular terminal running in the GitHub infrastructure. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna run Python web server in it here. So this is going to run on localhost 8000. GitHub Pages is going to notice that it's running, it's opened a server on that port, and I can open this here. So basically, this is that kind of like live dev server running in the GitHub infrastructure through this editor, and yeah, proxying around there. So what we can do is if I take off demo hello, if I save that, then I can actually just reload this page right here, and I can kind of preview it before I actually deploy. And that's a kind of quick demo of GitHub Pages and that GitHub code spaces and how that works. And you can kind of like mash together quite a few different things, commit it up, do all that kind of stuff. Cool. How's that? You into that? You a fan?
That's amazing.
Yes, yeah. It's cool, right? Yeah, cool. That was what I was looking for. I was just like, yeah, cool. So I'm gonna delete that code space at the moment because we've got a couple of other things.
Use of Python as the web server to get the maybe JS part of our
yeah, exactly. Cool. I'm gonna rush. Yeah, no, actually, yeah, Python, maybe JS, maybe not, whatever. So the other demo. So this is a more complex site. So that was like really simple how it serves, whereas this one. Actually, before what I'm going to do is I'm going to run this in a different way. So I'm going to run this straight in code spaces, but it'll take a little while. So, but I'm going to run this through Visual Studio Code. So what I can do here is I can open code spaces. I can create a new code space. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create this on the main branch of demo 2. And what this is doing is exactly the same thing as you saw before, apart from it's doing it through VS Code. So so you can do this without logging into GitHub through the web at all, and it will initialize that code space in the same way. The reason I'm doing that separately is there's a bit more container config on this. So I basically set some settings with a Docker file, which kind of installs some of the right things. So it will do npm install. It will kind of also install some plugins into the VS Code. So I'll basically have this ESLint plugin, which I thought I deleted, but anyway. And so you got all that config. And then, yeah, we've got some other stuff here. So you can see, is that opened? No, not yet. So here, this is using Snowpack, which is like a kind of thing like Webpack, apart from fancy. And it's got a bunch of different things in here. And the actual code itself is TypeScript files. And that TypeScript is using TSX, so it's quite a kind of complex build step, or not complex, but it certainly needs some building. So here I've got these same files. I can edit it in VS Code itself. So what I can do here is I can run this task. Oh, that was the wrong one. Oh no. So I will just open a new terminal and I'll do npm start. So what this is doing is it's running a dev server, but where before you saw it from GitHub, what this is going to do is it's going to proxy the web server from GitHub to my local UI, to my local machine, so I can access localhost 8081, and I can see this content here, right? Like, so basically I'm running a web server within GitHub, but it's as if it's local. And here you can see that if I change this to like demo 2, when I save that, it updates instantly with live reload. And you can see, just to see that, if I put up more confetti, you can see that as I change that to more confetti, that's kind of flowing down while the other things are updating, you know, like, so it's all kind of like, we're able to use kind of like modern web tooling in a yeah, through kind of as if it's local, but it's actually running somewhere else, which is kind of powerful. The other part of this is, which maybe I don't have time to go into just now, this got a workflow so that it will deploy it to GitHub pages. So every time you push something, what happens is it will push up to demo 2 and this action will run. So basically I updated index CSS and you can see this build happens, and part of that build step is to generate a GH pages branch on this repo and push it to there. So if you go to this repo, this main branch is what I've been editing, and then GH pages is the one that's generated by that. So you can see, yeah, that's how that kind of fits together, which is kind of neat. And then this one is then served by this URL. So this is kind of standard GitHub pages, but a more complex site. And yeah, we don't have to have any kind of like external build systems or anything like that. Cool. Yeah,
That's
cool.
so cool.
Yeah, yes. Sarah, you're like my hero.
You didn't see my face, like my mind was blown watching it. I was like,
there's some cool stuff with it. Yeah. So demo 3 is kind of interesting, I guess. So this one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this. Sorry, what am I doing? New window. Nope, that's not worked. It's still in beta, which is cool because when I'm messing up stuff, I can just say, hey, it's in beta. So we're going to create a new code space. You can connect to existing code spaces as well. So this is a kind of standard JavaScript library thing, and I will show you. So this basically uses Node because Node is fun, and yeah, this is the script. But what we have is, sorry, this is like a bit awkward to explain. What we have is, so this Node script is a bit more complex to build, but we can run it within this container, and as part of the workflow, it will publish it to NPM. So maybe I don't have time to show this, but in the workflow here, our build, rather than creating that GitHub branch, what it's doing is it's publishing to NPM. So basically, as soon as this runs, and I'm gonna, screw where to do it. So if I change this to saying demo 3 exclamation marks here, which should actually maybe, I think this might be sensitive to exclamation marks. I don't know. Yeah. Cool. So I'll just commit this, push this in, and put in exclamation marks, commit that, push it up to master. Yeah, so this is all with, sorry?
But you need to update a test.
Yeah, I mean, I updated the test previously and then satisfying it with this. Yeah, no, that is a very good point. So what you can see on this is that commit's gone up, even though I did it from within GitHub. And we can do it, we can see these commands running. So the first one is version bumping, and what that's going to do is increment the version with minor, major, or whatever Saren was talking about before. And it's going to push that as a commit back to the repo, which is cool. Then this is going to, it does that before checking out any code, and then it's going to bump. Oh no, I don't know what's happening here. Then it's going to publish at some point. And we'll see. I'm not sure if this will work, but it might do. It might be, right. So basically on this repo now, you should be able to see this has been automated version bump. So it's bumped us to 108. And then it's running through this publish step now, and that's generated an NPM package. And it's using some credentials which I've baked into the repo, into the settings, and then it's updated it. So now when I go into here, and you should be able to do this as well at home if you're interested. If I do npx gh pages at wait, what version do we bump it to? Was it 108? So that's downloading it. Oh, that didn't work so well. Oh, GitHub Pages, not GitHub Pages. GitHub demo. Why didn't you correct me, Ryan?
I'd say I was on mute, but beta.
Demo 3, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Bam.
That's amazing.
That is cool.
Yeah, so yeah, and that's all, like, that same process would happen if you edited it through the GitHub UI as well. Cool, and that's that. Sorry, so I kind of like slammed a lot of stuff in your faces there. So questions? Oh, actually, I had another slide. sorry. I'll show you one more slide. Sorry, I'll that was weird. I saw that demo 3 and I was like, I'm done. But I do have another slide, which is, so we just saw some demo. Oh no, that's the wrong screen. Oh dear, this is not going well.
At least you didn't have a message saying you hated us up.
Yeah. I'm on Slack with some, I don't know, I would never have that. I'm so happy to be hanging out with you. This is, wait, where was that? Nope, I've lost it.
Gold. I've seen it. It's worth it. It's definitely worth the wait.
Right, we've got the welcome thing here. Present this. Cool, can you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, loading.
Yeah.
Right, okay, so this is the stuff we talked about. We've got some demos. So this is the last slide. So basically, in the last few months, I've been hacking on some side projects, and all of these I built entirely in GitHub. Like, the code has never been checked out to my local machine, and it's worked really well. Like, it's kind of, so these ones here are all kind of like progressive web apps that do various things. Ruth, this poker one uses the weight clock that you mentioned, that you wrote about, which is really useful. Yeah. And then, yeah, this hyperlink one was a CLI that I worked on with Mike in our pair club. And in the space of 45 minutes, we're able to kind of create a repo, upload it to GitHub, upload it to NPM, and publish it and use it. And yeah, those are all cool. That slide was not worth it, but I showed it anyway.
Always worth it.
But, yeah.
Can you drop the links of the things that you built into the pack?
Of course. Yeah. I will.
Super excited about poker.
Yeah.
I'm kind of speechless. That was a lot.
Yeah, sorry, it was a bit rammed.
And I stopped. I was like, I'll just do some cooking while Ben's talking. And then I was like, no. This is way too interesting.
I'm sorry you're going to go hungry as a result of my GitHub demos.
I'll survive. Do you think, so this is in beta and you have got access. I have signed up for access to Ryan and I haven't got it, but I did that way after both of you, so I'm not surprised. Do you think that this is a feature that will be pushed up to GitHub or something like this? Are you feeding back about this feature?
I've not fed back about code spaces. I fed back about actions today, in fact, through the UI. But
is actions still in beta?
No, actions is like out there. They had a change about a month ago for security issues, which kind of affected a few actions. But yeah, no, it's pretty well established. Right. There's quite a few. There's a good kind of list of actions that you can.
I thought of that. I just wanted the viewers to know too. You can see how much I use GitHub tooling, right?
Exactly.
Do you think that code spaces will be behind like a paywall? Do you think it will be for premium accounts only, things like that?
I don't know. I hope not. I hope.
Yeah, me too.
Like, so you can set it so after 30 minutes of inactivity, it will kind of it'll pause and then you can restart it after that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they bring out some kind of like limit in that case, which is like, so maybe you can use it for like 30 hours a month or something like that. But I'm not sure.
Okay, that's interesting. I do wonder, like whether they'll integrate it more into VS Code. Like you said, it's already integrated, but I guess they're all one company now, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
So, yeah.
I mean, and it's one of the things, like, I mean, GitHub are amazing at doing betas, but then quite often they'll, after their beta periods, they'll change around and resolve quite a few things before making it public. But yeah, so as I said at the beginning, I'm no expert. Also, it's a really difficult thing to be an expert about. You know, like you're.
I know. I'm just sort of posing to you after having used it. I mean, like we're obviously all like, I want to use it. This seems like a really nice. I was saying it to you when you first showed it to me a few weeks ago. It seems like a really nice way to like keep everything. I feel like all my demos are fragmented, and I use GitHub Pages a lot, and it would be really nice just to have everything just contained and be able to just go in and like edit on GitHub properly. Like, yeah, I do find I like if I can do everything all in one place, I like that approach.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's all I have to say about it.
No, that's like, like unanimous.
I do have cool demo 3 in my terminal now, so I'm just gonna like leave tab open.
Yeah, no, it's a very useful tool, demo 3. So I'm glad it works for you.
I'm assuming just don't change the version.
You can do it without the @. The reason I did the @108 was because just to force it to the most recent version.
I was going to say, like, can I just get I'm just going to get your latest version if I just use its demo, aren't you? Oh no.
Now that it's published, it's like, yeah.
That means when I'm having a frustrating time doing things wrong with Git, I can just do that.
Yeah. And if you want, I mean, the repo is open as well. So if you want to add any more exclamation marks or
brilliant,
you know, like you can make it even better. So
cool. I was I was kind of so like intrigued in that talk that I forgot to Google about can I use, which I said I would.
Sorry, we've got it on record that you said you'd Google for it. So
one more talk. There is still time.
Yeah, actually, yeah.
Just one more question. The VS Code that runs in GitHub Codespaces, that's the same VS Code as the one that runs on the desktop version, because it's just an Electron app, right?
I believe so. I would imagine there's probably some stuff like random key bindings and things. I've closed the web version by accident quite a few times because I do like Apple W to close that tab, and it all closes. So I'm not very familiar with Electron, but I would imagine there might be some kind of like glue code or something that you need, but I'm not sure.
It's all open, isn't it? Even though obviously the hosting you're going to be paying, or maybe not for the compute, but the tool chain that you can run code spaces locally. And it'll orchestrate your containers, spin it up, run it inside it. So it's good.
Yeah, that dev container config you can run that on your local machine as well. So you can run like, and which is super nice for if you've got a company with like lots of different projects, like being able to like have a README which is like open it in VS Code. You know, like it's like a lot better than like kind of make sure you got this version of whatever and all that stuff. So,
do you know whether you can use code spaces with like private company specific Docker repositories and stuff?
So this is the stuff I don't quite know what their plans are, but I would imagine so. Like, because there is, I'm not familiar with Azure that much, but I think they've got a kind of way of spinning up VMs within your kind of, I don't know, virtual private network or something. But it would, if I could have a box in my house that when I use VS Code, it would run on that, I would be into that. Like, it's like, there's something quite nice about having a separate dev machine from the machine you're typing into, it feels good.
I particularly love full circle back to like the late 80s and Sun. It's like, I'd really like to be able to run this. Yeah, that'd be great.
No, I was in that slide that I was like, it's not new, like it's not new in terms of like mainframe systems in the 80s. Like it's kind of yeah, like I think everything repeats itself in some way or another.
Yeah, it's really exciting though, because being able to run a fully fledged development environment with a reasonable amount of compute on low power devices, like on your iPad, which actually has a decent amount of power, or like just little tablets. And for the stuff that I'm doing with prisoners in cell, it's like being able to actually take all of that control out and not need to install things on laptops and still be able to get them to code and run things. It's like, yeah, it's super exciting.
It'll be great for schools as well.
Yeah,
absolutely, because you got it's a sandbox, right? Like you can, and it's so powerful, like you don't quite believe it, but in that terminal you can do whatever you want. Like you can kind of, it's a full machine, you know, like so. Yeah, it's super cool. That's a great shout.
On YouTube, Max has just said they do have functionality. VS Code Remote will let you have an instance on a server and then connect to it from a regular VS Code desktop client.
Max,
Powerful.
Yes. Okay, great. That's awesome. We need to get Max on here. Cool, nice. I might pick your brains about that. I should point out that Max is a big fan of our podcast that we've been running from Remote Hack. I think, possibly. I mean, he's pretty into it. I think we're on his highest playlists. We have air quotes, the podcast air quotes. If anyone wants to kind of find out about stuff, I don't know. Oh man, that was a terrible advert. I feel like someone might watch this and unsubscribe from our podcast.
You can subscribe to my podcast. Shout out to Generative Artistry podcast. There you go.
That was a better one. Yeah, like succinct, not trying to tie Max up into it, all that kind of stuff.
And we could get Max as one of the top listeners for that if you want.
Yeah, Max. I mean, I know you love air quotes, but perhaps you should listen to Generative Artists. Is that
Generative Artistry? It's like the best mouthful podcast, right? Yeah.
Cool.
I feel like I need a podcast now.
Yeah. Come on to air quotes. Gabor, did you want to kick us off and talk us through some Elixir stuff? Is that?
Yeah, I would be very happy to do so.
I would be very happy for you to do so. That would be great. I'm really excited about this.
I also have slides because Elixir is amazing. So just to preface everything, actually, hold on. You should see something really bright yellow.
Yeah, that's yeah.
Okay, awesome. So just move the thing. Okay, so the background of it is, hello, that's my name. I'm currently a mainly Go backend developer. But I started learning Elixir because, I wanted to, it's been a fascination, and I had no idea what a functional language it was. And every time that I kept asking what a functional language is, people kept throwing phrases at me. It's like, oh, there are no side effects, and it's immutable. And I had absolutely no idea what any of those meant. So I thought, you know what? I am part of this incredibly amazing Discord community. And there is one person who said, you know what? I want to teach you functional programming, like not me specifically, but you people. So which one should it be? So we started a book club, and Elixir is on the table, and we all bought the, I can't even remember the name of the book. Hold on. Just imagine there's some elevator music going on at the moment.
Ryan, you could do some elevator music.
Sorry, I was busy getting a post-it note ready to write down what the book recommendation was.
Okay, so it's Elixir in Action 2nd edition, and you can get it in Manning. And there's also a promo code that I can give you to get you some percentages off. But anyway, so what is Elixir? It's a dynamic functional language designed for building scalable and maintainable applications. It runs in the Erlang VM, low latency distributed. Basically, you can read the slide. It is pretty much just a copy paste from the elixir.org. And so it's dynamic, there's no type hint, which is because it's a compiled language. I kind of thought that compiled languages will also be statically typed languages, and turns out I was wrong. And it's functional, so it has all the things with no side effects and immutable parts of it, which is kind of cool. But I am like on page 100, so I know that I don't know more about Elixir than I know about Elixir. But even until this point, my mind has been like blown so much that I thought, you know what, this is something that I really want to share with the world because it is amazing. So anyway, here are 10 things that is amazing about Elixir. Number 1, pretty much everything is an expression. So the IEX is the Elixir shell. It's an interactive thingy. Basically, it's kind of like when you type no, then you get bumped into a REPL. And yeah, so that's the shell. That is the expression. Pretty much anything where you hit an enter and it returns you something like a value or data, it's an expression. And then you get the value, the return value, because that's going to be the return value. Everything being an expression is an important part of Elixir, though. The other important part is everything is kind of organized into modules and functions. I started thinking about it as like I used to be a PHP developer, and in PHP you have like objects and methods. And I think in JavaScript you can also have classes and something else within classes, methods, I guess. But in Go you have packages and functions, and I think this is closer with it. The difference being is in Elixir you can define multiple modules in one file. However, the limitation is that one module needs to be defined in one go, as in you can't break up one module into different files. So you do the def module, and I might actually have a typo in there. Yeah, so after my module, there should be a do here, but there isn't, because obviously I need to write the slides 20 minutes before I do anything with it. And then that's a function. And then when you call it with myModule.add and then pass in 2 variables, and then that's pretty much it. Number 3. So this was the first thing. This functions with the same name but different number of arguments are going to be different functions. So you have a triangle, and then you can have areas for like equilateral, isosceles, and scalene triangles, and you would need to calculate those differently. The reason why that 1.73 to yada yada is there is because that's square root of 3, and I thought that is going to be a good enough approximation instead of calling the math library to do the thing. So if you only pass one argument to the area function, that area function is going to be called. If you pass 2 arguments, that function is going to be called. And if you pass 3 functions to it, 3 arguments to it, then that function is going to be called, which is kind of cool, because one of my gripes with pretty much all of the programming languages was that I have a deconstructed argument list, and I need to figure out how many arguments there are and then do a bunch of switches and if then else to kind of decide what to do with the code. And then this kind of removes that sort of having to deal with those decisions. Then we have private functions. Private functions are functions that only functions within the same module can call, but you from outside of the module can't. So if we have this thing, we can just do a more generic thing. Essentially, the third one that uses the s minus x, s minus y, that thing is generic and can be used for all the things. So we can just replace it with that. So when we get the equilateral, we just pass x in 3 times. The isosceles we pass in the base on 2 sides, and the scaling we just pass them on, and everything is going to still work. But you can't actually call generic area itself from the outside. Right. List is a singly linked list. So you have in JavaScript and pretty much all the languages, you have an array of stuff, and then that's an array of stuff. Even in Go, you have slices, and then you might have, yeah, anyway. So it's pretty much the arrays and slices in Go, but because it's a singly linked list, in order to do anything with it, you need to traverse the whole thing, which makes it ON complexity. So if you have, I don't know, 10 million points of data in that list, and you want to do anything with the last one, you need to step through each and every one of them one by one. But the way it's represented is essentially you have an array of 1, 2, 3, 4. You will have a thing called head and tail. So that one, number one, the first element of a thing is going to be the head. And then the rest of the owl is going to be the tail. And then in the next one, it's essentially just another head and tail. Right. The equality is not actually an assignment, it's pattern matching, which is going to be super cool. So here you have a map of a string called Bob and an int with 25, and person is going to be that map, which is, well, tuple. But if you do that, you can actually pattern match them. So name is going to become Bob, and age is going to become 25, because the shape of the thing on the left is going to be the shape of the thing on the right, which is super nice, because say we have a local time, which is, let's get, it's a tuple of 2 tuples, and the first tuple is going to be the date, the second one is the time, and then you can start deconstructing it. So if you don't care about the date, just the time, you can do that, and then you have the time. Or if you only really want the hour, you can just do that and just extract the one thing from it. And again, it's, you don't have to do the whole traversal of things. Then we can also do this kind of thing. Like I want amount to only match if all of the values are the same, because on the left, the variable names are the same, so they should mean the same thing. So this will work because amount is going to be 127. This will not work because we're expecting 3 of the same things, but it's not 3 of the same things on the other side. Again, super fun. We can also do the same thing with variables, which means, like, the little caret means I want the value of the variable named expected name to be Bob, and I want that to be pattern matched to the other side of it. So IEX15 is going to match. IEX16 isn't going to match because the expected name is Bob, but the value is Alice. So it doesn't actually do, it's not valid. Right, so the cool thing about lists being linked lists is you can separate them out, which is also going to be important later. So you can chop the head off and get the rest of it. So head is going to be number 1, tail is going to be 2 and 3. You can also easily deconstruct pretty much anything with that if you know how many of the things you have. There are also ways of deconstructing things like, I want the first 3 and give me the rest of it in a different thing. And you can use it with strings, bit strings, pretty much most things in Elixir. Now, here's an interesting thing. So multi-clause functions are kind of weird, but they're like, how they have functions with the same name, but the different number of arguments are different. But here, functions with the same name and the same number of arguments can still be different because we are making assumptions or expectations about what the data going in is. So we have a geometry module called area, and if the first thing, the colon rectangle, is called an atom, it's essentially a thing that you don't care about the value. Is just that. Yeah, all you really care about is that it's the same thing as the other one. Which means if you call geometry.area and you pass in circle 83, then the third function is going to be called for it. And again, it kind of removes a lot of need to write boilerplate and error checking code or like branching and decision trees to figure out what to do with the code, because you just write a different clause for whatever data that comes in that's sufficiently different from the previous one. The beam, which is the name of the virtual machine, will just go from top to bottom and will match the first one. And if it doesn't find a match, it's just going to crash. Guards are also kind of stuff that you use with functions. It's kind of similar to multi-clause functions, but you can do a kind of like an if clause when defining the function itself, like use this function if whatever condition matches true. And then you can also separate your code into like different branches and then deal differently with it. Like, for example, if you're calculating the inverse square root of a thing and the incoming value is 0 or negative, you can just say no or handle that gracefully instead of having to error check your one function that would do all of that. Yeah, it also replaces a lot of the regular expression use cases for me, simply because I can just use whatever the language gives me for free to do all the stuff that I had to do by constructing a lot of these boilerplates. Right. So Elixir doesn't really have a for loop or a while loop. It has recursions. So pretty much every time you want to do a for loop, you need to do a recursion. And this is, for example, here's a list of numbers, and let's sum them up together. So by using the pattern matching deconstruction and the different different multi-clause functions, you can just do this. So if you pass in a non-empty list, it's going to start with the sum bit, and then it's going to keep going until you get here. Now, the problem is that this is not tail recursive. And the reason why tail recursion is great is because there's no memory overhead. So you can just do arbitrarily long recursion, and you're not going to run into the stack depth exceeded. I'm just going to crash because I'm now 256 deep into a call stack. But a tail recursion is essentially a call when the very last thing that you do in a function is call another function. Here, the very last thing you do is an addition. So because of that, it's not a tail recursion. Rewriting it into that is essentially this one. You call this, actually. Yeah, you call this, and then it goes into that. The current sum starts up being 0, and then you create a new sum, and then you call itself with the new sum and the rest of the list, which is a tail call, and you can pass it arbitrarily long list, and it's not going to run out of memory. And once it kind of got to the end of it, so that the tail of a list, like a list that has one element in it, the head of it is going to be the element, and the tail is going to be an empty list. And if you call that, if you call do sum with an empty list, the pattern matching is going to default to that. And because everything is an expression, and everything kind of returns something, you don't need to manually return anything. Whatever's on the last line gets returned. So by that time, you should have all the current sum and return it, and everyone is happy. Yeah. Now, this was pretty much comprehensions is the part where I am in the book, but comprehensions is basically telling Elixir, here are two things, two lists or maps or whatever. I want you to do something with it. And Elixir kind of figures out what to do with it. So for example, on the left, you have an Elixir implementation, which is for X being 1, 2, 3 and Y being 1, 2, 3, just create a multiplication table, and it creates a multiplication table. And it's not even a function, it's just one expression that you do. In Golang, on the right-hand side, you would need to create a variable to hold the table, and then do a nested for loop, and then just keep appending it. And it would be very similar in JavaScript and PHP as well. And the good thing about Elixir is that it's just so much more terse and easy, and I don't need to, think about it. I don't actually know what's happening behind the scenes. I would assume something similar to the two nested for loops, but you can also do something like remove, like you can add the guard clause to this, so that only do this if X is smaller than or equal to Y, because 3 times 1 is the same as 1 times 3, and you don't need one of them. And that's just, it makes the whole experience super elegant and super nice. So anyway, this was pretty much where I am in the book and what I wanted to showcase. It is, I really enjoy learning about Elixir and learning Elixir, and I'll do my best to answer any questions if you have any.
That was brilliant. Thank you so much for that. It was like, yeah.
It looks really cool.
Yeah. I mean, you have all the other functional languages like Lisp and Haskell and Scala and whatnot, but all of them are like super scary, and just hard to approach and hard to get started. And then Elixir kind of looks easy almost. Like most of it makes more sense to me than Golang occasionally.
Am I right in thinking Elixir sits on top of Erlang, or is it,
Yes.
So do you, because I've tried to get into Erlang in the past because I really love I love what it's about, but I've always found it really kind of quite challenging to get into. But so how does Elixir help that? Like, what's the dev experience like?
Pretty much. So I can't give you a really in-depth answer because I am really new to this.
Yeah. I really like this kind of like giving talks about stuff that you haven't used that much, but I'm gonna tell everyone about it anyway. Like you and me.
It's amazing. So from what I can tell, Elixir is kind of like Erlang in easy mode. Obviously, you have access to all of the Erlang features because they're still there. But there are a lot of helper things on top of Erlang that then have been written in Elixir, and it is just, I guess, makes it more accessible for people. I mean, I guess if you really want something performance heavy and super hardcore thing, you would probably go with Erlang or maybe even Haskell or whatever. But Elixir so far has been easy to get started. Like all I had to do locally is brew install Elixir. And then I don't even know that I needed to install Mix. Mix is Elixir's command line linter and project scaffolding thing. And then VS Code has the extensions, pretty much the Elixir extension, and then you're good to go.
Cool.
I have a question, but it's not really about Elixir. It's what do you plan on building with it first? Like, what's going to be your first project?
I have no idea. I mean, so recently I was working with a company where I was thinking that maybe potentially we could replace some of these services, but since my contract has come to an end, that's no longer an opportunity that I can do. I really don't know. I mean, I always have a bunch of ideas, and I might just use one of them. Like, I think step one is going to be to redo Advent of Code 2020 in Elixir, because I've done the whole thing in Golang, which was super nice.
That'd be cool.
But redoing it in Elixir is going to be good sort of practice to figure out how some of the basic parts of the language works, I guess.
Sarah, that question kind of feeds into similar to what Max was asking on YouTube. So he was saying, what practical applications of Elixir have you found so far? I think I guess you just answered that by like talk about where you would have used it. So in that scenario, like, would you have thought about using it for a single microservice or like?
So the good thing about Elixir. So one of the examples that the book gives at the very beginning is, if you have a services architecture, you would probably have your microservice in one thing, and then you have whatever RabbitMQ is. Would that be what is it called?
It's like messaging.
Yeah, the messaging thing, and then you have RDBMS, and then whatever, and all of these things are written in different programming languages, or the adapters are written in programming languages. So you have an infrastructure where you need to deal with, actually I'm going to check that because I really have the book open here. Bear with me. Please hold. Your viewership is really important to us. Yeah, so an HTTP, like, I really, really want to share this, but I also don't want to because I don't want to get in trouble with the legal department of Manning.
Episode 1.
Shut down. No, but stuff like HTTP server might be in Nginx or Fusion Passenger. Request processing would be in Ruby on Rails. The long-running processes or requests would be written in Go. Server-wide state management would be in Redis. Persistible data would be in Redis and MongoDB.
Yep.
Background jobs would be in cron, bash scripts, and Ruby, and service crash recovery would be in Upstart. So all of those you can replace with Erlang, because all of those can be written in Erlang. And then it's a lot easier if you only have to maintain services in Erlang than if you have to have people who are somewhat proficient in either most of those or even all of those services, or hire enough people so that you have at least, 2-3 people who are very proficient in each of those things, because that gets expensive. Although I suppose paying people who are proficient in Erlang or Elixir also might get expensive. I hope.
Cool. Yeah, Max also said, yep, that pretty much answers it. I'm also sorry if commenting via YouTube is awkward because of slow delays. I was delayed in reading that out, so it's going to appear even slower. So
right, no, that's fine. The other thing that I can see Elixir being super useful is that a feature of the language is that if it crashes, it's fine, but it's designed to do. Because of the way the virtual machine is built, if something crashes, only that instance of a virtual machine crashes, and the rest of the processes are like carrying on as normal. Obviously, you should handle crashes and you should make sure that your code doesn't crash, but if it does crash, it's not going to take down the entire infrastructure with you. The other thing is, because of the tail recursion call taking up no memory, it is very much suited to just churning through a large amounts of streaming data. So I wouldn't be surprised if, for example, Netflix had stuff written in Erlang or Elixir. Obviously, I don't know because I've never worked at Netflix. So
Now might be
yeah.
your chance.
Yeah, exactly. It sounds like sounds like yeah. There's been a kind of few comments alluding to what you were wanting to go next.
I mean,
no, yeah,
maybe in a year or 5.
Yeah, no, that's great. I really dug your presentation, and I think a lot of the things with the kind of pattern matching and like the head tail stuff, I like that. I really appreciated you sharing that, because it was like, I think I really love that kind of like getting those new structures of programming languages, and it just kind of changing the way you think about problems and stuff like that. You know, like it's really nice. Like cool. I think we're coming up to a couple of hours now, so like it might be a nice time to kind of wrap up. I don't know how this works. Goodbye. No. Yeah. No,
Smash that subscribe button.
So I have actually on that. I've got a couple of comments from people. I mean, in YouTube. We are possibly changing, this is quite a while back, but we're changing this to PR Oxford, because we're only going to talk about pull requests from now on. That's a really good idea.
Wouldn't it be PR not Oxford?
Oh, yes, sorry. Saren, I'm so glad you're here to kind of keep our brand online.
It's literally my only purpose.
No. It's an honourable purpose. And Andrew mentioned about when we were talking about presenting topics that we don't know, and that being great, he thought that could be a good talk format, and I like that too. Like it's like kind of like come to our meetup and hear us talk about things we don't know about. So yeah, great ideas. And then the last message from Jamie on DM, and what he said was, "Don't forget to say like and subscribe this video." Yep. So yeah, great feedback, very useful.
Also, click that little bell icon.
Yeah. I don't know.
Yeah,
where
hit that bell.
But no, like
Is
thank
there
you.
even a bell? I've never seen a bell.
Oh, it's after you click the subscribe button, because you
I don't
don't.
know about.
Yeah.
Because you have to subscribe and then also click the bell button, because one of them is going to only keep it in the left in your channels that you follow. But if you click the bell button, apparently, it also sends you an email or some form of notification.
You get a push notification on your phone, because if you accidentally click on it, you're like, why am I getting all these notifications? Why are you spamming me, Google?
Yeah, cool. We'll learn that too. That's cool. Yeah, no, thank you so much for all of you for taking the time to do this. This has been like, it's been really good. And yeah, that's good. So how does this work? When we push everyone out the doors or something like that?
Yeah.
Is that like,
We'll continue.
You could.
I mean, it's taking up a lot of time from my really busy social calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah, same here. Well, but yeah.
And if someone wanted to,
I googled can I use. Sorry, Ryan.
what?
I didn't hear anything.
That really that.
No, Zoom is muting both of us.
Cool. Well, I guess
I
that's
googled can I use.
Can I use? Yes.
Great. Yes. Can I use? Let's close that loop.
Yes, it's on. Yeah, it's powered by browser compact data. Just I was right.
I learned. That's great. That's great to know. Cool. Well, yeah. Thanks everyone who kind of tuned in, and everyone who's here. That's like, yeah, that's been really cool. And yeah, see you online.